Free Speech for People, along with Roots Action, launched moments after the president took his oath of office, impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org, a campaign seeking an impeachment investigation of President Trump based on his direct and serious violations of the Constitution the moment he took the oath of office. The president was repeatedly warned prior to the inauguration that he would be in violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause and the Domestic Emoluments Clause if he did not fully divest from his business interests.
As you know, President Trump has displayed a casual indifference to the law in general, but nowhere is this more striking than in his use of the presidency for his own personal and private profit. In our call for an impeachment investigation, we have focused on two specific violations of the United States Constitution that we know for a fact that President Trump is in violation, and just as importantly, that these are well established as grounds for impeachment. And when we talk about the corruption of the presidency, it's easy to get lost in technical terms like emoluments. And as a lawyer, of course, I'm happy to do that. But it's important to understand that what President Trump is doing by enriching himself through the presidency is not only unconstitutional, it's not only immoral, but it's actually fundamentally corrupting of the republic to profit from the presidency at public expense. He's doing this in two main ways that violate specific provisions of the Constitution. The first is by taking money from foreign governments. The founders of the Constitution were actually quite concerned about federal officials being influenced by payments from foreign states, and they put a provision in the Constitution known as the Foreign Emoluments Clause or the Foreign Corruption Clause that specifically prohibits these types of arrangements. The second category is enriching himself from the public treasury. And again, the founders may not have anticipated every particular angle of the president's grift, but they did put a provision in the Constitution. And it's called the Domestic Emoluments Clause, or also known as the Presidential Compensation Clause. It provides that the president is paid with a fixed salary that's set by Congress for his entire term of office and not a penny more. But what President Trump is doing is using the Treasury as a kiddie for travel to his own resorts and hotels and rent in his buildings so that he can enlarge his salary from the Treasury without complying with this provision of the Constitution. Now, to be sure, not every violation of the law or even of the Constitution is necessarily grounds for impeachment. The standard in the Constitution is that president can be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. It's ultimately up to the Congress to determine what count as high crimes or misdemeanors, but as we have cited in the legal analysis at the impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org website, the founders of the Constitution were actually quite clear on this specific point. One of the leading founders, Edmund Jennings Randolph, who was confronted at the Virginia Ratifying Convention with an argument against adoption of the Constitution on the grounds that the president might be too powerful and too subject to outside influence, cited these provisions, the Foreign Emoluments Clause and the Domestic Emoluments Clause, and said, if discovered, he may be impeached. That's where we are now. I want to close with a note that the examples of impeachable violations that we've cited in the legal analysis at impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org and that I've talked about today may not be the end of it. In the coming weeks, we will be working with our distinguished legal advisory board, which includes Professor Ross, and which you can see on the impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org website, to update that analysis, considering what President Trump has done so far in office. And of course, once an impeachment investigation is launched, Congress may decide to expand the scope. Thank you.
there are other voices far more important that will be heard in the future. The 870,000 people who, as of this morning, have signed the petition at impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org live in every community of the United States. That number continues to grow. We know that in a matter of days it will cross the 1 million threshold and keep going. Those names are much more than letters on a printed page or pixels on a screen. They're people who care deeply about the Constitution, who understand that it's a fundamental precept of democracy that no one is above the law, that the most powerful position of the U.S. government must not be occupied by someone who has shown willingness, even eagerness, to violate fundamental precepts of the Constitution. And what we're going to be seeing that may not yet be apparent from Capitol Hill is that around the United States, not only the signers of this petition so far, but many, many millions of other people believe deeply that when the people lead, the leaders will follow. And this petition campaign is based on that concept. So the petition is only one part of what is going to begin to unfold in the next several weeks. And that is that in every congressional district in this country, people have already begun and will continue in greater numbers to contact their representative in the House and to say in no uncertain terms that no one is above the law, and that in this situation, whatever the partisan affiliation of the member of the House, it's imperative to launch a formal impeachment investigation. Now, we sometimes hear the skepticism, maybe even cynicism, that nothing's going to happen in the House on impeachment because most of the members are Republicans. And I think we need to remind ourselves that history tells us something very different. When in 1974, the House Judiciary Committee voted on impeachment, on 3 articles of impeachment of the Republican President Richard Nixon, out of the 38 members of that committee, 7 Republicans voted for impeachment. And there are many strong reasons, not only in history, but in our current political situation, to believe that large numbers of members of the House, whatever their party, are going to be feeling the heat. And that heat has begun. And next week, the temperature will rise as members go back to their districts, some of them holding town hall meetings, some of them being visited by their constituents to press this point. And so in closing, I want to emphasize that the impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org campaign is not by any means only about a petition drive. This is about an awakening democratic fervor at the grassroots that will bring about the impeachment of this president.